Frame Wars: How People Shape Your Reality Without You Noticing. Episode 1. Your frame of reference is controlling you. Most people think they see the world as it is. But you don't. You see it through a frame of reference, a mental lens built from your past, your fears, and your identity. 1. Where your frame comes from. Your frame isn't chosen. It's inherited. It comes from patterns, memories, wounds, and the survival strategies you learned just to exist. You don't walk into conversations with a clean slate. You walk in with a psychological script. 2. Power is just frame versus frame. Every interaction is a collision between two frames. The stronger frame shapes the reality of the moment. The weaker frame adapts, explains, justifies, and tries to keep up. This is why dominance and submission happen silently, long before words even matter. 3. How frames control conversations. In conversations, power hides in small behaviors. Whoever handles silence better controls the emotional space. Whoever asks the questions guides the direction. Whoever controls the topic controls the frame. Whoever stays calm sets the emotional temperature. People don't follow dominance. They follow certainty. 4. Your frame decides your role. Humans rank each other in seconds. By posture, tone, presence, and perceived value. Your internal frame becomes your external role. A strong frame says, I define myself. A weak frame says, tell me who I am. Your frame is your power. You're not just living life. You're living psychology. And your frame of reference is shaping everything. Your relationships, your confidence, your power, and the way the world responds to you. Rebuild your frame, and you rebuild your reality. Episode 2. Frame Battles: How People Dominate Conversations Without Saying Much. Most people think conversations are just words. But every time you speak to someone, something deeper is happening. You are not just exchanging information. You're establishing who sets the tone, who leads, and whose reality becomes the dominant one. Today, we are breaking down the hidden power games that decide who wins the room, long before the first sentence is even finished. 1. Silence is a weapon. Silence is not empty. It's a test. When silence falls in conversation, here's what really happens. The dominant person stays relaxed. The submissive person becomes uncomfortable. And the first person to break that silence loses the frame. Silence creates tension. And whoever controls tension controls the moment. Most people rush to fill it with jokes, explanations, apologies, or over-talking. But powerful people don't rush. They hold silence like it's a throne. Why? Because silence forces you to reveal who you are. Your need to talk is your need to relieve anxiety. And anxiety is submission. Questions versus explanations. The next battle in frame control is simple. The one answering more questions holds less power. Questions guide the direction. They point the spotlight. They define what matters in the conversation. Explanations, on the other hand, expose weakness. They show you're trying to justify yourself, trying to be understood, trying to be accepted or validated. Powerful people speak with intention. They ask questions that make you open up, while revealing almost nothing about themselves. This is why interrogators ask questions, why CEOs ask questions, why leaders ask questions. It's not about information. It's about control. 3. Topic control equals reality control. In every conversation, there is a silent negotiation. Who decides what we are talking about? That person controls the frame. If someone throws you off, changes topics rapidly, or redirects conversations, they're asserting dominance. Examples: you confront someone, and they pivot to your tone. You ask a question, and they answer with a question. You want clarity, and they turn the topic into your behavior. Topic control is the highest level of conversational power because it shapes the narrative, it defines reality, it chooses focus, and it forces the other person to adjust. You win conversations not by speaking better, but by choosing what the conversation is about. 4. Body language. Mirroring versus mismatching. Your body reacts before your mind does. And frame battles are fought through posture, breathing, and micromovements. Mirroring means matching someone's posture, tone, or energy. It creates rapport. It says, "We are similar." But powerful people rarely mirror automatically. They mirror intentionally. To build trust, gain access, or lower defenses. Mismatching, however, breaks rapport. You lean back when they lean in. You slow down when they speed up. You stay still when they gesture wildly. This subtly tells them, "I'm not following you. You're following me." Mismatching elevates your frame and signals dominance without aggression. 5. Emotional temperature control. This is the most advanced frame battle. Whoever controls emotion controls the interaction. If you stay calm while the other person becomes emotional, you automatically become the anchor. You become the one the room or the conversation centers around. Think of the calm negotiator, the stoic leader, the composed partner, the unbothered friend, the person who doesn't react when others explode. Calmness is not passive. Calmness is pressure. It forces the emotional person to adjust to you, not the other way around. Emotional stability is one of the highest forms of dominance. You don't win conversations by talking louder, faster, or smarter. You win by controlling silence, asking instead of explaining, choosing the topic, using your body intentionally, and mastering emotional temperature. In the end, conversations aren't about words. They're about frames. And the strongest frame always shapes the reality of the moment. Episode 3. Frame collisions. Why some people intimidate you instantly. Have you ever met someone who didn't have to say a word, and yet the entire room shifted around them? That's not charisma, not confidence, not authority. It's a frame collision, where their internal world is so solid, so grounded, so unshakable, that yours adjusts automatically. Today, we are breaking down the psychology of instant intimidation, and why some people's presence overrides your own reality the moment you meet them. 1. The psychology of presence. Presence has nothing to do with status, money, or physical size. It's the byproduct of internal certainty, a frame so stable that it doesn't bend to external pressure. People with presence communicate one thing without speaking. I know who I am. And here's what happens when someone like that enters a room. Your body detects their stillness. Your brain senses their lack of insecurity. Your instincts shift into evaluation mode. And your own frame subconsciously adapts. You don't feel intimidated by them. You feel intimidated by the contrast between their certainty and your uncertainty. 2. The 3 frame types. Instant intimidation comes from how your frame interacts with theirs. There are 3 main types. 1. The rigid frame. Loud, aggressive, needs control, intimidates through force. Rigid frames resist everything. They're hard on the outside but fragile inside. They break under pressure. 2. The weak frame. Over-explains, avoids conflict, adjusts quickly, seeks approval. Weak frames collapse easily. They're shaped by the environment instead of shaping it. 3. The grounded frame. Calm, centered, emotionally regulated. Doesn't chase, doesn't react. Grounded frames are rare. And they're the most intimidating because they don't play the game. They define it. This hierarchy is why your instincts respond instantly. 3. How frame collisions create instant hierarchy. A frame collision happens the moment 2 people become aware of each other. No conversation needed. It's psychological physics. Here's what happens in microseconds. 1. Your nervous system scans the person. Posture, pace, breathing, emotional state. 2. Your brain predicts their threat level. Social threat, emotional threat, dominance threat. 3. Your body calibrates. Maybe you straighten your posture. Maybe you shrink. Maybe you go silent. Maybe you talk more. You're not reacting to the person. You're reacting to your perception of their internal world. If their frame feels more solid, your mind automatically shifts into a lower position. Not because you're weak, but because your survival instincts prioritize stability. 4. Why some people feel larger than life. Some people appear big without physical size. Why? Because the human brain exaggerates the perceived power of stable frames. Here's what creates that effect: slow movements, minimal blinking, controlled breathing, unreactive expressions, measured speaking pace. These behaviors tell your brain, this person is not threatened by anything happening right now. And that triggers an automatic interpretation. They must have power. They must have confidence. They must have control. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. Your brain reacts to the signal, not the truth. 5. Why you shrink around strong frames. Here's the real reason you feel intimidated. Your frame collapses in the presence of someone whose internal world feels more stable. This is adaptive psychology. To avoid conflict, to gain acceptance, to maintain safety, to appear non-threatening, to preserve social harmony. Your mind automatically reduces your presence to match the perceived hierarchy. You talk softer. You avoid eye contact. You explain more. You shrink your posture. You think faster but speak slower. This is not weakness. It's subconscious survival. But here's the good news. You can train your frame. Instant intimidation isn't magic. It's psychology. And the people who intimidate you aren't better. They're simply more grounded in their internal world. If you learn to stabilize your frame, to stay calm, present, and self-defined, you'll stop collapsing around strong presences. And you'll start becoming one. Next we'll dive into Episode 4, How Manipulators Use Frame Control to Rewrite Your Reality. Episode 4, Emotional Leverage. How people use your feelings to control your frame. People don't control you with logic. They control you with emotion. In every relationship, romantic, social, professional, someone is using emotional leverage to influence how you think, react, and behave. Not always intentionally, but always effectively. Today, we break down the hidden emotional tactics that shape your frame, even when you don't notice. 1. Emotional withdrawal, the silent punishment. One of the strongest psychological tools people use is withdrawal. Not shouting, not arguing, just pulling back their presence, and letting your anxiety fill the silence. Because here's the truth. People panic when the emotional supply suddenly disappears. The one who withdraws appears stronger. The one who chases appears weaker. This shifts the frame. They are the prize. You are the pursuer. 2. Guilt triggers, the hook that pulls you back in. Guilt is a psychological shortcut to compliance. When someone says, "After everything I've done for you, I can't believe you treat me like this. You're making me feel this way." They're not expressing emotion. They're attempting to control your behavior by altering how you perceive yourself. Guilt changes your frame from, "I'm right, I must be wrong." And once someone controls your emotions, they control your decisions. 3. Hot and cold patterns, emotional roller coaster. This tactic is ancient and extremely effective. When someone gives you warmth, then suddenly pulls away, your brain enters reward-seeking mode. You start chasing the emotional high, like pulling a lever on a slot machine. This creates attachment through unpredictability, not comfort, not stability, but the rush of never knowing what comes next. And the person providing that emotional instability becomes the person controlling the frame. 4. Emotional anchors. You feel what they want you to feel. People bind emotions to moments to influence how you react later. Example: they give you intense affection early on, then withdraw, creating longing. Or they attach fear, guilt, excitement, or validation to their presence. This is emotional anchoring. You stop responding to the situation and start responding to the emotional pattern they created. You're not reacting to them. You're reacting to the emotional version of them embedded in your mind. 5. Over-validation, the trap of praise. Validation can feel good until it becomes a leash. When someone floods you with excessive compliments, support, and encouragement, then begins to limit it, your brain becomes dependent on their approval. You start modifying your behavior to keep the validation flowing. That person has now installed a new frame. You need my approval to feel good about yourself. And from that moment onward, they have emotional leverage. 6. Emotional timers. When they decide your worth. People use timing as a form of emotional control. Quick responses create closeness. Delayed responses create uncertainty. This timing is not random. It's a reinforcement pattern that defines who feels secure and who feels anxious. Whoever is emotionally calmer controls the pace, and whoever controls the pace controls the frame. Here's how to break emotional leverage. Emotional leverage works only when you don't see it, because once you can name the pattern, you can break the pattern. Remember, no one controls you unless you give them your emotional center. Your frame, your peace, your reality is yours to reclaim. Next episode. Episode 5. Manipulation. Through identity, how people shape who you think you are. Episode 5. Identity manipulation. How people quietly rewrite who you think you are. People don't just influence your emotions. They influence your identity. The way you see yourself, your worth, your role in their world. The most powerful form of manipulation isn't control of your behavior. It's control of the story you tell about yourself. Today, we uncover the tactics people use to quietly rewrite your identity and reshape your entire psychological frame. 1. Naming your personality. Identity labels. Humans internalize labels deeply. If someone calls you too emotional, you eventually start regulating yourself to fit that identity. If they call you selfish, you begin overgiving to disprove it. If they call you cold, you become warmer than necessary to compensate. This is identity manipulation. Not controlling your actions, but controlling the version of yourself that you try to live up to. 2. The role assignment. Who you are to them. People lock you into roles. The helper, the dependable one, the emotional support, the fixer, the responsible one. Roles feel comforting at first, but they become prisons. Because once someone assigns you a role, you start shaping your behavior around it. And the moment you try to step out of it, they say, "You've changed. You're not like you used to be." They don't want you to evolve. They want you to remain who they need you to be. 3. The identity mirror. You start to see yourself through them. Identity manipulation works best through reflection. When someone constantly reacts to you with disappointment, irritation, judgment, or withdrawal, you internalize that as evidence of who you are. Slowly, you adjust your entire personality to avoid triggering their negative reactions. This creates a psychological loop. Their emotional response becomes your identity guide. 4. Emotional templates. Rewriting your worth. The most subtle manipulation mirrors your emotional past. Someone taps into your old wounds. Abandonment, rejection, criticism, inconsistency. They recreate familiar emotional patterns, not because they know your history, but because they sense your reactions, and your nervous system automatically reverts to old scripts. This is not manipulation by words. This is manipulation by emotional resemblance. They don't just influence who you are, they reinforce who you were. 5. Identity deflation, shrinking you to control you. Some people weaken your identity on purpose. You're overthinking. You're imagining things. You always mess things up. You're too much. These statements slowly chip away at your confidence. Once your identity shrinks, you become easier to manage. Small identity equals high compliance. High identity equals resistance. This is why manipulators rarely attack your logic. They attack your identity. Because once your identity collapses, you'll follow them anywhere. 6. Identity inflation, the power of conditional praise. Identity can also be manipulated through elevation. People will praise you intensely, not to empower you, but to attach you. You're the only one who understands me. You're different from everyone else. You're special. It feels good. Too good. Then they limit the praise, and you begin living to get that identity high again. It's not love. It's identity addiction. Reclaiming your identity. Here's the truth. Your identity has never been fixed, and it's definitely not defined by other people. The moment you recognize identity manipulation, the spell breaks, the labels lose power, the roles dissolve, the mirror clears. You reclaim the most important frame of all, the frame of who you truly are. Next episode begins a new arc, but for this chapter, you now understand the deepest form of influence. Not controlling someone's actions, but shaping their identity.